Welcome to the Preserving Family Podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to equip you to gain insight, information, and inspiration to help you protect, teach, and guide your family during these turbulent times. Our goal is to provide tools and resources to help you strengthen and preserve your own marriages and families. Now here are your hosts, Dr. Mark and Janie Ogletree.
Well, everyone, welcome today. We're so glad that you're with us. We always are grateful for those who listen and give wonderful feedback. We're going to dive right in today with this thought. Have you ever heard this before in your house? That's not fair. Or life isn't fair.
Or why did they get that and I didn't?
Right. Or how come why did they get to do that? And
why did they get new shoes and I didn't?
And so one of the things we want to talk about today is this idea of fairness and parents trying to create a culture of fairness in their homes. And we'll even talk about fairness in marriage a little bit later as we bring one of our daughters on as a little special guest. But life isn't fair. In fact, one of the things, Janie, we would tell our kids, because one of their favorite expressions when they were young was,
"That's not fair."
That's not fair, right?
And our favorite comeback was, "Yep, you're right. Life's not fair."
We would always tell them, look, life isn't fair. And the sooner you learn that, the better off you'll be, because parents can drive themselves insane trying to make life fair for everyone. It's a losing battle.
And I think as parents, we try to be fair, right? We try to do the best that we can. Maybe Christmases, try to make, equal amounts for everyone, or birthdays, we try to do the same traditions. But on a day-to-day level, you cannot make everything fair and equal any more than society can make everything fair and equal for everyone. We even have government agencies trying to make everybody have the same opportunity, the same advancements, the same salaries. I mean, it just becomes crazy. You can't do that.
Try to do that for millions of people.
It's
hard to do for two people, right?
Life is not fair. And especially in families, if you have more than two kids, it just becomes crazy trying to keep everything fair. It's impossible. It can't be done. Because for the first reason that children need different things at different times, right? So if I had one child who needed new soccer cleats today, we'd go buy soccer cleats and come home, and obviously somebody in the family would say, "That's not fair. How come she got new shoes," or whatever. And I'd be like, well, in 2 months when you start basketball season, you'll be getting new shoes. Everything can't be fair every moment of every day.
Right.
It's just not a true principle.
Right. We'll always fail miserably trying to do it that way. And maybe I should say something counter to where we're going today, because we don't want to mislead people. But there are families where there are favorites, right? And all the kids know who the favorite is. And we're not saying that either, right? We're not promoting that. That's another whole problem, probably to another podcast where we could devote to. But this idea of that life isn't fair, I think, is a great thing for us to talk about today, because we see a lot of parents frustrated and a lot of kids frustrated because they're not understanding this the right way. Maybe to lay a foundation today, Janie, you were the one who reminded us of the parable of the sower. One of the places that can be found is in Mark chapter 4. And in verse 4, it says, "It came to pass as he sowed," this is the sower, "some of the seeds fell by the wayside, and the fowls of the air came and devoured it up." So there's kind of one circumstance. The second one, in verse 5, "And some of these seeds," it says, "fell on stony ground, where it had not much earth, and immediately sprang up, because there was no depth in the earth." But the problem was when the sun came, because the roots couldn't go down and get the nourishment needed, those plants withered away. So there's another circumstance. Here's another circumstance. "Some fell among thorns. The thorns grew up and choked it, and it yielded no fruit." So thorns, and in this case, the plant's not going to reach its full potential, right? Another circumstance, and then the last one, "And then others fell on good ground, and did yield up fruit that sprang up and increased." Now, I know that there's hundreds of interpretations of that parable, but we thought it really fit well for this idea of fairness and equality.
Mark, I think that is so prevalent in our society today that things aren't fair. We hear that everywhere we go. And I really feel like that's one of Satan's greatest tools. It's a great tool of distraction. It's a great tool of division and contention that he uses to fan that flame
Yeah.
that we need to be jealous of other people and create discontentment in ourselves, because in that whole thing that if you're succeeding, I'm failing. And I think that's really one of Satan's greatest tools today.
Let's remind everyone that idea, Janie, that you just shared, that if you're succeeding, I'm failing, comes from President Ezra Taft Benson as the president of the church, giving that talk years ago, a landmark talk on pride, saying this is a form of pride today, that others can't be happy. People can't be happy for others. If you are having something good happen in your life, then that's not fair to me, right? And in reality, I've always wondered, wait, if something good happens to me, what does that have to do with you in any way, right? I mean, we're kind of separated from each other on that.
And I think in families, that's something that we really need to point out to our children, to build each other up, to be excited for each other, to support each other, that when something good happens to a member of our family or our neighbor or our community or our ward, whatever, that's we should rejoice in that.
Right.
And not be jealous and sad for ourselves or think that I'm failing if you're succeeding. And I think Satan really uses that a lot today.
One of the things we tell our kids is, as they have, our oldest grandchild is 13, but as these grandchildren become teenagers, we'll say, okay, pay attention, beware, because one of the things you're going to see in life is that if your children are successful, people won't like you, right? People will be mad, and you won't even know what you did, and we learned some of those lessons as we were raising our teenagers, that there was a lot of jealousy in that area. There's jealousy in the area of financial opportunities people have. People now, we can't travel anywhere in the world without having a post on social media somewhere about that. We all kind of fall into that a little bit. We want everyone to know about all the good things that are happening in our lives, not having others realize, wow, there could be some terrible things happening too, but we're not going to advertise those things. And so there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of jealousy between families today, between people, individuals.
And it's really sad because that's totally goes against the gospel.
Right.
And we are all equal in God's eyes. He loves every one of his children equally. Yes, some of us start in maybe less than perfect situations. And some are born, with a golden spoon in their mouth, like in everything in between. And so we already start off where life is unfair. From the day that we're born, life is unfair for everyone. From children being born, in Africa in
extreme
horrible
poverty or
situations, up to, people being born in mansions or castles. And and depending on how you look at it, I mean, some people are born with health issues. Some people are born great. Some people are born, to drug addict mothers. Some people are born to parents that love them dearly. And, there's just every situation that, you can't even begin to map out every situation. But life starts out unfair, right? And the Lord sent us here to overcome these. He gave us each individual challenges and opportunities and gifts to overcome. And there's a great talk by Elder Gilbert that he gave several years ago called Becoming More in Christ, the Parable of the Slope. And I don't know why this really stuck out to me, but I've loved this talk. And he said, as a young boy, I had great aspirations. One day after school, I asked Mom, what should I be when I grow up, a professional basketball player or a rock star? And he said, unfortunately, Clark the Toothless Wonder showed no signs of future athletic or musical glory. And despite multiple efforts, I was repeatedly denied admission to my school's advanced academic program. My teachers finally suggested I should just stick to the standard classroom. Over time, I developed compensating study habits, but it wasn't until my mission to Japan that I felt my intellectual and spiritual possibilities began to emerge. I continued to work hard, but for the first time in my life, I systematically involved the Lord in my development, and it made all the difference. But I love this talk because he goes on to talk about it doesn't matter where we start. Some of us were planted in stony ground. Some of us were planted among thorns. Some of us were created in a beautiful, fertile soil. But it matters more on what direction we're heading, and the direction and where we're going and the slope of our life, not where we began. And it's an incredible talk that I recommend to everyone. Elder Gilbert said, "We all have different intercepts in life. We start in different places with different life endowments. Some are born with high intercepts, full of opportunity. Others face beginning circumstances that are challenging and seem unfair. We then progress along a slope of personal progress. Our future will be determined far less by our starting point and much more by our slope. Jesus Christ sees divine potential no matter where we start. He saw it in the beggar, the sinner, and the infirm. He saw it in the fisherman, the tax collector, and even the zealot. No matter where we start, Christ considers what we do with what we are given. While the world focuses on our intercept, God focuses on our slope. In the Lord's calculus, he will do everything he can to help us turn our slopes toward heaven." So beautiful.
Yeah, that's so great. So Janie, that, we kind of had this, we've kind of been brainstorming here and thinking, okay, why isn't life fair? And maybe we can identify a couple ideas here and concepts and just develop this idea of, okay, why isn't life fair? And, kind of back to quoting Clark Gilbert again, we came up with this first one of, well, sometimes people are born in difficult circumstances. We know that. We know people like that have been born in challenging circumstances. And Clark Gilbert said this. He said, "Let me start by addressing individuals with difficult starting circumstances, which include poverty, limited access to education, and challenging family situations. Others face physical challenges, mental health constraints, and strong genetic predispositions. And for any struggling with difficult starting points, please recognize that the Savior knows our struggles." And he kind of talks and develops that idea. But yeah, sometimes we're born into circumstances that just aren't super favorable. By the way, that doesn't mean you have to stay there. But I think that's a key point to make, that not everyone's going to start off on this journey in the same exact place.
The second thing that we talked about is the choices people make.
Yeah.
We all know people in our life.
By the way, we're great examples of this. We made a few dumb choices.
Well, we all have. That's what it is to be human, right?
Right.
We all make choices that either improve our opportunities or sometimes limit our opportunities.
Right.
And so you look around and you see people who maybe are addicted to drugs or alcohol, who have then stifled their future. But then you see people who work hard, they go through school, they go to graduate school, they become something, they make an incredible career. These are all choices that we make. And people have every day make good or bad choices that put them in different circumstances, so that then it creates some unfairness, which we can't as a society cure.
Right. Or even try to fix. This reminds me, Janie, of a couple that you and I know very well, just a great family that moved. It doesn't matter where they lived, but in their mind, they were just not in a good circumstance in a different part of the country. It wasn't good for their kids. It wasn't good for them. And so they moved, and now they live here where we live. And they'll tell you that move has made all the difference for their family. So that was a choice that they made. Others who don't make that choice may have other alternatives. But I always think from an athletic perspective, some people will talk about Michael Jordan in my era, and they'll talk about the incredible athlete that he was, and a lot of it was probably God-given, but sometimes we forget that, oh yeah, he stayed after practice every day for a couple hours after everyone went home and shot free throws or practiced shots or practiced, other skills. A lot of people are where they are today because they choose to devote a lot of time and energy and effort into what they're doing, and they become successful at it. And that should mean that we on the sidelines say, well, I'm so mad about that. No, they work for that. That's wonderful.
We have a son-in-law who's a great example of that, was born in less than favorable circumstances, but throughout his life just kept looking for opportunities to grow and develop, found people in his life that could help him, took the opportunity to go into the ROTC, to get into BYU, which was life-changing, which set him up for success right there. Then decided to go on a mission, which again, life-changing. And he's just been able to pull himself out of the circumstances that he came from. And he's such a role model and so inspiring, and now has a great successful career. And we can't wait to see, what he's going to do in the future, because he now knows he can overcome anything.
Right.
And he's just on a path that, that through a lot of help, and I'm sure the Lord helping him through, But he himself too has worked and pulled himself out of a situation that he started in that wasn't ideal.
Right.
And so I love stories like that, inspirational stories like that, with Michael Jordan, who rode the bench all through high school and then never really played. But,
Right.
you know, and you hear these inspirational stories all the time of people who have literally pulled themselves out of horrible situations and they're on a great slope.
Yeah.
And so it does not matter where we start. And again, life isn't fair.
Well, how about number 3? Sometimes we forget this. We lose perspective and forget that one of the reasons why we come to this earth is to be tried and tested. I mean, that's part of the plan, right? That this life is a test, that we've come here to have some trials and challenges and some difficulties. In fact, the Lord puts us in circumstances often, I think, so that we can learn and grow and develop skills and talents and resilience and grit and those type of things. But when you're in the moment of that trial and that difficulty, sometimes, like I say, it's like a veil's pulled over us and we forget that, oh yeah, sometimes life is hard. We have setbacks, we have disappointments. You and I had talked about this week of a disappointment that I had. You know, you just grit it out, you grind your way through it, and you recognize that where the Lord closes a door in one place, that he's going to open one somewhere else and we can have success.
Number 4 that we've kind of identified is that sometimes some of us just have really good luck or good fortune, right? Or we're just at the right place at the right time.
Right.
Some people are
Those
born...
lucky people, we love them.
And some people are born into incredible wealth or opportunities that may not have had anything to do with their own personal goodness or righteousness or whatever. President Rexy Lee, who was a former BYU president, he quoted to his students, "We all have drunk from wells that we did not dig and warmed ourselves by fire that we did not build." It's really powerful. He then called on his students to give back and replenish the educational wells that earlier pioneers had built. Failure to reseed the fields planted by others can be the equivalent of returning a talent without increase, which is a great tribute also that we need to teach our children, that if we are blessed and privileged and have opportunities that other people don't have, that it is our great responsibility and duty to give back, to help other people rise up, to help other people have other opportunities, to train people maybe, to help them on their slope, to get out of their bad situation. But yeah, if we call ourselves blessed and fortunate, it is our duty and privilege to give back.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to realize that.
You know, Janie, I think of us sometimes where we know that we just have not had some great luck with houses that we lived in, right? I mean, I think we're pretty famous for, I think our theme is buy a house, fix it up, make it look really nice, spend a lot of money on making it look good, and then sell it for less than you bought it for, right?
Yeah, that's been our mantra is
that's our theme.
Buy high, sell low.
Yeah, we love that. But you know what? We have friends that have had completely different luck with their homes, right? They've sold homes and made hundreds of thousands of dollars and got to the point where they could buy a house in cash, you know, and live a wonderful life without a house payment, and that's great. And is that because we did something bad? Is it because we're wicked? Is it... No, sometimes people just have great luck and the housing market is great.
Yeah, we lived in different markets that weren't great. And so life isn't fair.
That's right. The last one that we came up with is that, yeah, there are people that do have physical, mental, and maybe even cognitive limitations sometimes. Just like Clark Gilbert said, he probably wasn't going to be a rock star because his musical ability wasn't great. This reminds me, Janie, of our good friend Randall Wright, who said that one of his dreams growing up as a kid was to be an NBA basketball player. But he said there were 2 problems. One was that he was just short in those days. He was just small. He didn't grow until later. He had kind of a later growth spurt, so he was always really small. But then he said, but the second one is I just wasn't really that great at basketball, which I thought was pretty funny. But anyway, and yeah, like you, Janie, I'm 5'7". I knew in high school that I probably was never going to dunk a basketball, right, or have any other great physical skills that would translate to a professional sport. But that's okay because there's other things in my life that I've identified that I can be good at. In fact, I believe that all of us can be pretty good at something, maybe really good at something that other people aren't so good at. All of us have different skills and abilities, but yeah, some are limited by their physical stature or their mental or cognitive abilities, right?
Right. And I think along with that is, as we're teaching these principles to our children, I think another good principle to teach them is that we come here with gifts and talents from our Heavenly Father. We know that every one of us at least has one spiritual gift, right? But some people come into this world with talents. You've seen those 4-year-old children who can sit at a piano and just play, like incredible. I mean, I think there's certain gifts that we develop in the pre-earth life that we come to this life with, and others don't have those. And again, that's not fair in some people's eyes, but it's the truth. It's God has given us all individual talents and abilities and gifts, and we use those to bless ourselves but other people. But we need to remind our children, just because you don't have the gift of piano maybe and your sibling does, you have other talents and abilities. And that's how life is fair, is that we all bless each other with our abilities and talents, but we don't all have all of them.
Yeah. No, Janie, that's great. I love what you're saying. And I think that's why, for parents, one of the most important things I believe that any parent can do for their children is help them identify what their gifts and talents are. I mean, parents, that's so important that it's something you want to be prayerful about and get the Lord's guidance and direction. Okay, so let's transition now for a minute from kind of some of these general principles to just now into the family for a minute, because in our family with 8 children, and once again, what does that mean? That means that when you have kids in high school, you also have children that are babies, right? In our case, at that same time. And so we've seen a huge lifespan. Also, we could say that in my own career, the opportunities and the money that we were making at one point in our life with our children as our oldest children were teenagers was really different than the money that I was making and the opportunities that we were having when our youngest children became teenagers, right? And so it'd be easy for our older kids to look down on those younger kids and say, well, that wasn't fair. For our family trip, we went to Utah to see our relatives, and for you guys, you're going to all these other places or doing other things. And so we've had to help our children understand that, yeah, life is, it is unfair. It's different. There are different opportunities. One of the things I tell our older kids sometimes is, guys, yes, we didn't have as much money when you were teenagers, but I had a lot more time. I was home a lot more. When our youngest were teenagers, I was gone a lot. I had a busy church responsibility and a work responsibility that made it hard to be home every night of the week. And so there's trade-offs, right, in different phases of life.
Right. And different kids are afforded different opportunities and at different times and in different things throughout their life. And again, we just are teaching these principles to our children that life is not fair. I think we need to teach our children that so that they don't go out into the world and think, wait, how come I'm being gypped here?
The world owes me something, or
right.
It should be like
that
this.
Life isn't fair. But in the family, we do our best. And I think a success for one member of the family is a success for all of us. Yeah. So if one child gets an award, we all go and we cheer them on, and because that brings happiness and glory to all of us, right? We're all successful because one person is having this great opportunity. If we have one child that gets invited to go to Europe with a friend, how awesome. Come back and tell us all about it. We can't wait to hear, your experiences. That blesses all of us. And that's how we should look at it in families. I've heard of families who are so competitive against each other that it's really to an unhealthy level, that I'm going to outdo you on this and I'm going to outdo you on this. And again, healthy competition is fun in families, but when it gets to the point where it becomes mean or derogatory or spiteful or jealousy, we do not want that in families. We want to build each other up. We want to love each other. We want to support each other and cheer each other on to be the best that we can be, because in the end, it blesses all of us.
Yeah.
And these are the principles that we should be sharing with our children.
Maybe just for a minute, we can make a distinction between fairness and equality. But first, just some interesting data. According to one study, about 65% of children reported that they perceive their parents as being fair, which is really interesting because when you ask the parents how fair they are, it was a lot higher. It was like, oh, we're like 85%. 85% said that we're very fair. About 65% of children said that. And so once again, probably there's a 40% group of people out there feeling like, yeah, it's not really fair in my family. So here's equality. Equality would be this, that everyone gets the same thing. Fairness would be people get what they need. you know. And Janie, I think of, as you think of our own kind of examples in our family of that with different opportunities our children were given, but I think of President Nelson. He traveled the world literally as a surgeon, attending conferences, presenting papers at conferences, whatever. He would try on occasion, about 20 or 30% of the time, he would try to bring one of his kids with him on those trips. And it was never done by, okay, we took kid number 4 last week, so next time it's kid number 5. It was totally done by who needs me, is what President Nelson would say to his wife. And they would talk about what child could benefit the most by going with dad on this trip for a few days.
I mean, I agree with that. Having 8 children, we felt like we were always playing whack-a-mole, right? You know that old game where the little beaver or the mole would pop up and you'd hit them on the head and the next one would pop out.
Right.
And we felt like we would spend so much time on one child, helping them through a crisis or whatever. But then it felt like the minute we got that, calmed that one down, the next crisis would come up with a different child. And I felt like just all the time people were popping up. And again, as a parent, you're doing what you can do and what you need to do in the moment. And another child might deem that as, oh, I'm not getting an attention right now, or they're spending so much time with that child. And, we know how that feels. And you're just doing your best when you have multiple children. But even today, as we have 8 children that are all married, that are all living in different places all over, we are trying to do our best to get to each one of them, spend time with them. And it's just as hard as it was when they were children or teenagers.
Right.
Because now the distance, we've got to fly to several of them. We even have children that live in the area, and it's hard to go see them because of our schedules, of their schedules. And so it's always a balancing act. Constantly, oh, have we spent time with this family? Have we seen them? Have we gone to see them? And it's just a constant battle for parents to make things.
And we probably are going to see the grandkid that lives here, their soccer game more than the kid that lives, across the country. I mean, that's just the reality of when you live in different places.
But
you have to deal with that.
Again, that balancing act is we see the kids here more often, but how fun is it to go for like a whole week to our out-of-state kids and spend actually time in their home with them? And so again, there's that discrepancy between quality and quantity, which again, as parents, we're always trying to balance and trying to figure it out. So it's a hard job for parents to try to be fair and equitable at the same time.
Yeah.
No matter what stage of life.
So maybe a couple things that we could do. We'll just intervene here right now for a minute and say, okay, a couple things parents can do. Number 1, communicate openly with their children about why decisions are made. I mean, we can explain things. I think the worst thing you could say is, that's not for us to tell you. No, explain to them what's going on, like we would try to do. Focus on individual needs rather than comparisons. Or in other words, what do they need versus, well, we bought this kid this, so now we got to go buy this other kid this. We spent this much money on this kid, so now we have to spend that much on that kid. That kid got to go to Europe, so now we got to find a way to get this one. You're going to die trying to do all that. Teach gratitude and contentment. Janie, we talk about this a lot, right? Such a great focal point to be able to be happy with what we have and to be grateful for what we have and not always wanting more. And then involving our children in some of these discussions and decisions we make, if it's appropriate and when it's appropriate. Sometimes it's not, sometimes it is. But once again, our children have all had different opportunities just because of where they were in life, where they lived, in the world at certain times, who their friends were, our financial situation. So yeah, those 8 children all had a little bit different experience growing up based on some of those circumstances.
So as we conclude here today with this principle of life isn't fair, which maybe we're the only ones who ever heard that in our home, but I don't think so. I think a lot of us as parents hear that. But we really need to create a culture of happiness and contentment in our home, of gratitude, of being grateful for where we are, what we have, the opportunities that we are, as our family, are given. And that we don't always have to be looking outside and comparing ourselves. I really feel like social media does this to our teens and our kids today, is just they're constantly looking out and seeing what everyone else is doing. So then they feel jealous or discontent in their own lives if things aren't going as they perceive, that their friends or what they're all doing and the opportunities and experiences that they're having. So that's really hard. So the greatest thing that we can do as parents is teach our children to be happy and grateful for what they have. And I think we are all very blessed in this society. Another one is that, again, just life isn't fair. We just have to teach our children that it's not. Sometimes our teams win, sometimes we lose. Sometimes we get the job, sometimes we don't get the job. Sometimes we make the team, sometimes we don't make the team. I mean, sometimes we break our leg, other people don't. Life's just not fair.
Right.
And I think children just need to learn that.
I mean, that's like you said, let's just teach it. I love that.
And another thing we can do to teach our kids is that the principle of being happy when others succeed doesn't take away or blow our light out when they light their, somebody else's candle gets lit. It doesn't take away from anybody. It doesn't take our joy away when somebody else has a great success or gets a great job or makes more money than we do or makes the team and we don't. We need to, it's hard. I mean, I'm not going to lie. That's hard when things like that happen. But we need to learn and train our children to be happy for others.
Yeah.
And I think we as parents need to model that ourselves. Is when somebody around us has a great success, we need to point that out and say, isn't that so great that they got that job promotion or they get that opportunity to go on this trip, and be happy for them and teach our kids that it's okay, that, our time will come another time, or, that good things happen to us too. But I think that's just a really lost art in this society, is to be happy for other people and not be jealous and envious and resentful. That's not a Christ-like trait at all.
As you say that, Janie, it made me think of a time in our life where, with our twin daughters, where one of our twins called us and said, as a senior in high school, "Mom and Dad, this is so incredible. You got to hear this. Madison, her twin sister, just made second team all district in basketball. Oh my gosh." And she just ranted and raved of how happy she was for her sister. And knowing that Kinsey was a great basketball player herself, we're like, well, Kinsey, what about you? And she didn't even want to talk about that. She was just so happy for her sister. And then she goes, well, I made first team. She didn't even want to tell us that, but she was so happy for her sister. And I think that's something, once again, that taught us a lesson that we were learning from our own children.
Yeah.
To be happy for others.
I agree. And I had that experience as we were having our children over the years. And we had a big family. We had 8 children. I had a sister who really struggled with fertility.
Yeah.
And she ended up being able to have 2 children, which is a big blessing. But through the years, I always felt so terrible. Like, I didn't want to even tell her that I was pregnant because she had been struggling to get pregnant. But every time I did, she was so happy for me. And so never once let on. And I'm sure it hurt. I'm sure, because for me, it was so easy to get pregnant and something that she really struggled with. But she really rejoiced in everyone in the family who were having babies. And she cheered us on and came to our baby showers and always had a happy face and never was resentful, or at least acted, I mean, I'm sure she was hurting inside, but she was so happy and cheerful and joyful as all the nieces and nephews came. And she was a great aunt to all of them. And we were so excited when she got her too, finally. But
Right.
but through the years, that taught me such a great lesson of just the charity that she had, and the
idea of celebrating the success and happiness of someone else.
Exactly. And again, it doesn't take away from you, that
Right.
that she could enjoy in our happiness. And I think the last principle that we want to reiterate is that we should, again, cheer each other on in our families, that we should never create a system where people in our family are jealous of each other, competing with each other, trying to outdo each other. Again, a little bit of healthy competition is fun in families, but it should never become a source of envy or jealousy or hatred, that we should be happy when our siblings or family members do great things, because again, that's just a joy. And if one child's getting an award, we should all go to the presentation. If one kid has games, as many people can, we should go cheer them on. And I think that creates a family of joy and love and closeness and charity. And so we need to teach our children this principle of fairness and equity, because it's kind of a big deal in our society today.
It is. I mean, it's a great virtue, right? When we talk about teaching your children virtues and values, this is a great one to teach for sure. And so For our LDS today, for let's do something, why don't we lean on the positive side today? And why don't we teach this principle in our families to rejoice and celebrate the successes of others, including our own family members, and to be happy for others when they succeed. I love that, Janie. I think giving compliments and praise, like you said, I love that you said it's becoming a lost art, and I think it is. And this can start with all of us by writing simple notes to people when they do something well, telling someone that they gave a great talk in a church meeting or a great lesson, acknowledging our teenagers, our youth, when they do something that's wonderful. Let's let them know about that. Those are Christ-like virtues, and that's becoming more like Christ. Everyone, thank you so much for being with us today. We look forward to being with you again. Until then, we hope you have a wonderful, awesome week.